on the cheek. "I mean it. Promise me. Allura goes home no matter what. I promise," he told her. 13th close encounter of the absurd kind, day -3 days. Follow your inner moonlight, don't hide the madness. Allen Ginsberg. On the warm and sunny evening of June 18th, Bob Campbell was in full Chicago Richie mode as he delivered an ice cooler full of ribeye steaks, chicken leg quarters, and Polish kielbasa to a frat house on the campus of American University, and collected a paper bag full of cash in return. The consignment of forbidden flesh set the wealthy frat boys back over $20,000. Inflated Federal Reserve notes good only for rats to nest in, true, but 20 grand was still a pretty penny for a backyard barbecue. Bob's special cell phone buzzed in his jeans pocket, the one he used for Operation Belladonna only. Bob moved out onto the sidewalk outside the frat house, stepped beneath a stately elm, and flipped the phone open. He read a text message from Georgia Myers to her Jewish stepsister Talia Halberstam, Marvin's daughter from a previous marriage, a quasi-friend whom she had begun cultivating again at the WPB's request, and Marvin's. Now that she was working at the White House, even if only as a high-end hooker, Georgia was persona grata again in the family. Talia and she were getting very chummy, a Jewish BFF being an excellent cover for a Nazi spy. Every text message that Georgia sent to her stepsister actually did go to Talia Halberstam's phone, so that if the Secret Service or DHS ever checked, they would find all the messages duly delivered and recorded there. Thanks to Birdie, the criminal techie geek, who was making a fortune off Vinnie Skin's business, text messages from Georgia's phone were double transmitted on a different frequency sufficiently close to the phone's normal operating frequency to mask the fact, and were copied to Bob and Betsy both. Georgia did not dare bring a disposable or other second device past White House security, in view of the questions it would provoke, so she had to use her own personal phone. In order to communicate with her handlers and remain undetected, Georgia had to compose a text to her stepsister which made apparent sense, but which contained hidden messages for the two circus ops. In this case, Bob read, "Hoy, Talia, how did Sherman Recep go? Was Larry high whole time again?" Bob had no idea who Larry was, and it didn't matter. The important things were the misspellings in the salutation. Misspelling Talia's name told them that Georgia wanted an emergency meeting, and the second misspelling indicated extreme urgency. Bob used the Belladonna phone to call Betsy. Their two phones were programmed to break up transmissions between different cell relays, encrypt same, then bounce them off an old Euro satellite from the 1990s stationed above DC that was still working, but which wasn't equipped for monitoring from Earth. Nonetheless, conversations had to be kept short and cryptic. "Did you get that?" Bob asked her. "Yeah," said Betsy. "Looks like Larry's been a bad boy again." "Hey, sweetness, I feel like a bite to eat, and I don't mean food," said Bob lewdly. "Meet me at the roller derby?" Anyone listening would assume he was a client making a business date with working girl Betsy. The roller derby was a Georgetown nightclub, but in code it referred to the actual proposed meeting place with Belladonna, which was a Chew Easy on L Street, a Middle Eastern restaurant that paid the requisite bribes to the authorities so they could serve meat dishes to patrons. Kasim's Garden of Delights was a restaurant and bar with cameras inside, but none in the outdoor piazza eating area, which was discreetly accessible through a wrought iron gate on L Street and also a rear alley. The owner was Abdel Kasim, born Sheldon Silverstein in Tel Aviv, who arranged for his garden tables to be unmonitored through the simple expedient of bribing his brother-in-law in the DHS. It was a popular meeting place for people in government and organized crime, who wanted a quiet tete-a-tete off the electronic record for assorted amatory, financial, or illegal pursuits, and Abdel Sheldon surcharged accordingly. "I can't make it," she told him. "I'm kind of tied up right now." This was SOP as well. Both handlers never came to an emergency meeting. Bob fought off the temptation to ask literally, and instead he said, "Tell you what, I'll head on over there, and if you can get free, give me a call and we'll hook up," indicating he would take the meat at the kebab joint. "You got it, stud," said Betsy, and hung up. She would pass the information on to Vinnie Skins that something serious had happened and Richie was going for an unscheduled meet with Belladonna. They were coming to trust Georgia's instincts. She was holding up better than they had expected, and if she thought something was important enough to break pattern, it probably was. Bob texted Georgia back, a preloaded spam text telling her that he was an exiled African head of state who urgently needed her bank account number. so he could split the fortune he had embezzled from the National Treasury with her. This informed Georgia where the meet would be. An hour later, Bob was sitting at a table in the hot, muggy summer twilight under an umbrella in the outdoor section of the Garden of Delights, sipping an insanely overpriced imported beer and munching on artichoke and goat cheese hors d'oeuvres that may have borne some vague resemblance to what people ate in some unspecified part of the Middle East. There were a lot of these Israeli-run Middle Eastern restaurants, and they were usually generic places like this that served the Tel Aviv equivalent of fast food. Bob saw Georgia slip inside from the L Street entrance. She was wearing a neat beige pantsuit of the kind known to the fashion world as a Hillary, and she looked like any district civil servant or office worker out for dinner, except her beauty caught the eye of every man and many of the women in the place. It was always difficult for Georgia to remain truly inconspicuous. She strolled over and sat down with the scruffily dressed bootlegger type at the white wrought iron table. Kasim's was well known as a place for such incongruous meetings. "You okay leaving the White House in the middle of shift, if that's what you call it?" asked Bob. "Hunter's at a diplomatic due at the UN in New York, and he won't be back until midnight," said Georgia. "They don't mind if I take a long lunch, so to speak, and I don't have to order up room service from the mess if I want to go out. I just take a lunch break like the other staff. I'm not in jail there, they just watch me like I was. I'm sure they're tracking me on camera, but you said this place was safe. No spy cameras." "Yes, which is why your coming here may raise a red flag when they wonder where you've gotten to," said Bob. "You need to have a quick salad or something and go. What's up?" "The government is going to kill Kanesha Knight and blame it on you guys," Georgia told him. "What?" "They're going to assassinate the head of the CIA," she went on. "That's the excuse they're going to use to invade the Northwest Republic. They're going to say you killed her. It's going to happen tonight." Back in the White House, Secret Service Special Agent Lee Lyons got a call from Agent Victor Chan in the downstairs monitoring room. "Sir, you asked for anything unusual regarding FOTUS's movements?" In the absence of a FLOTUS, a First Lady of the United States, the Secret Service had adopted the code name FOTUS to designate the woman in Georgia's job slot, First Whore of the United States. It was strictly unofficial, but of course everybody in the White House knew it and was in on the joke, except for poor Georgia herself. She thought her Secret Service code name was the romantic-sounding Moonstone. "Report," ordered Lyons. "FOTUS went out for dinner and she stepped into Shel Silverstein's kebab hole up on L Street," said Chan. "That's a dead zone." "Yeah, I know," said Lyons. "We keep bitching and sending nasty memos to DHS, but for some reason they won't do anything about it. Silverstein's probably paying somebody off over there. She may be just eating falafel for supper," said Chan. "Or she may be meeting somebody she shouldn't be," said Lyons. "Maybe she has a boyfriend she's still seeing, in violation of her contract, which would be understandable in view of... Never mind. If we can catch her stepping out on POTUS, I can get her contract canceled early and get her lovely ass out of here. Check it out. Get down there and get an eyeball on her. If she's meeting somebody, stick with him or her, and let's get an ID on them." "I'm on it, sir," said Chan. Back at the kebab garden, the two of them were interrupted by a Mexican waiter who took their dinner order. Bob was pleased to note that Georgia eschewed wine or beer and ordered Afghan tea. When the waiter was gone, Bob said, "Okay, give it to me from the top. We did 7th inning stretch early so Hunter could catch Air Force One up to New York, and after I got cleaned up, I went up to the residence the back way like I usually do," Georgia told him. All of a sudden, the door to the cabinet room opens up ahead of me, and Janet Chalupiak and that big black Secret Service guy Jimbo Hadding come out and start walking down the hall together. They didn't see me behind them, and they're talking about Kanesha Knight getting killed in some kind of drive-by shooting late tonight. The word around the West Wing is that Hadding is Hunter Wallace's hitman when he wants somebody taken care of. "Yeah, we've picked up on that elsewhere," Bob told her, nodding. "You need to be extra careful around him." "What exactly did they say?" "Well, I couldn't very well tiptoe up behind them and eavesdrop, but Chalupiak says for Hadding to make sure he's wearing a mask, but make sure the white guys on the team aren't. So the cameras will pick up on Kanesha and her bodyguard getting whacked out by white men. Then they'll Photoshop the surveillance tapes to make sure the Secret Service men aren't identifiable, and change their faces to known boss agents." "Boss doesn't work outside the Republic, only WPB and CMI," said Bob. "Maybe they don't know that or don't care," said Georgia. Anyway, Janet asked Hadding if he minded killing a black woman and her black bodyguard if it would start the war that wiped out the Republic and killed millions of white racists. And Jimbo says, fuck it, I kill anybody I told to kill. I gets paid all the same. The noble African at his best, commented Bob. You wanted to know when the war was going to start, said Georgia. Well, looks like this thing tonight will begin the countdown. Yeah, there will be a couple of days of ranting and raving and build-up in the media about us wicked Northwest racists. How dare we raise our hands to a strong black woman? How dare we even exist? Then they attack. Jesus, swore Bob. He glanced up. The patio doors into the restaurant proper were open, and he looked right into the eyes of an Asian man standing at the bar in a dark, button-down suit and tie, who was looking directly at Georgia and him. The Asian's eyes flickered briefly and he looked away, his face expressionless. For some reason, Bob got a tingling chill in his spine, and he was suddenly certain that the man was watching them, and he was up to no good. Then he spotted the small earphone mic in the man's ear and he was sure of it. Damn, she was followed here, he thought. He quickly decided not to tell Georgia. He needed her calm and on point now, not rattled with paranoia. He took out his buttlegger phone. Hang on. I need to set up a meet with my boss. He has to know about this right away. Your mysterious boss that I don't get to meet or know his name? Asked Georgia archly. That's the guy, said Bob. The waiter brought their food. He texted out of rotten blues and pearly whites. New business, need 5 and 3 units. We'll watch for your call. Anyone intercepting the text that was familiar with the flesh and plant peddling business would assume he was asking Vinnie Skins for 5 cartons of British-made Rothmans filters and 3 pounds of chicken breasts. New business did not mean a new customer. It meant something urgent had come up, and watch for the call instead of wait for it let Cardinale know that Bob had reason to believe he was under physical surveillance. Okay, Georgia, I want you to finish up your hummus or whatever that is, get up, smile at me in case you're on candid camera, and then I want you to go back to the White House. You just went out for dinner, is all. What are you going to do about the CIA woman who's going to get killed tonight? Asked Georgia. I don't know. It's not my call, but keep a sharp ear out over there and be ready to go for a therapy session with Dr. Jake tomorrow morning, even if it's not your regular day, he told her. Things will start moving real fast now. Georgia was a quick study in the espionage game, and so after finishing her plate of unidentifiable goo, she stood up and left per instruction. Bob kept an eye on the Asian at the bar, and he saw him watch Georgia leave. The Oriental did not follow her, nor did he take out his phone. Bob started to wonder if he had been mistaken about the man. He ordered another beer and made a show of casually watching a niggerball game on his phone while he sipped, keeping a covert eye on the Asian, who seemed in no hurry either to leave. About half an hour later, Vincent Cardinale and Duke dropped into the seats at his table. Where's the bad boy? Asked Cardinale. Gook in the dark suit by the bar, said Bob. That guy's got cop written all over him, and I should know, because I'm one myself. He appeared about 10 minutes after Our Lady rocked up, and I'm convinced he was watching us. Plus his ear decoration. He forgot to take it out when he left the White House, said Cardinale. I know him. He's a Secret Service agent named Victor Chan. Yeah, looks like you're now a made man, so to speak. Do you think he's reported back to his people yet? Has he used his phone? Not that I've seen, said Bob. He stayed with you and didn't follow Belladonna. You're still sitting here and not getting dragged away to the cellars of the J. Edgar Hoover building, so that means they want to see who you are and where you go. Now they see us and make the butt-legging connection. The Secret Service will figure, Our Lady is maybe just working an angle to peddle smokes in the West Wing or something like that. If we're lucky and the president finds her charms especially irresistible, she'll just get a warning to stay away from known criminals like you naughty boy. Tonight he'll follow you and see where you go, so just finish your route as usual, come back to Arlington, and let's hope to hell I'm reading this. Right, and we all of us don't end up in the torture cellars. Now, what was the emergency meet about? Bob ran down for them what Georgia had told him. Shit, said Cardinale under his breath. What do we do, boss? Asked Duke. This changes things. We have to at least try to stop that hit, said Cardinale decisively. I don't know if it will make any difference, but if we can blow the lid off and at least let people know it wasn't us but Wallace's goons cacking their own Sheba, it will take a lot of the wind out of their sails. I doubt they'll call off the invasion, but it will sure gum up the works propaganda-wise. But we have to get on it now. We have to figure out when and where and how it's going down. What about our inscrutable friend at the bar? Asked Duke. We can't have him following us around all night, considering what we'll be up to, said Cardinale. Normally I wouldn't cack a federal agent due to all the repercussions, but in a matter of days we're going to be at war, and we're about to be up to our ears in repercussions no matter what. Looks like that flatface gets to be the first casualty of the Great Northwest War, or whatever historians decide to call it. One of theirs and not one of ours, which I hope is a good omen. The alley behind here is part of the dead zone, Duke reminded him. My main Red Sea pedestrian shell pays for that so his customers can park elsewhere, or take the bus and come and go through a private door and stay off digital. Nearest cameras are on M Street. We need to get Flatface out back and take him there. I'll do it, said Bob. Don't worry, I'm up for it. You guys split, I'll finish my beer, and then I'll leave by the alley gate. He'll follow me out since I'm the one he's interested in. I've got my buttlegger gun, I'll use it, then I'll break contact with the scene. I'll find someplace private to disassemble the weapon, I'll toss the pieces, and meet you at one of the E&E points back in Virginia. Cardinale shook his head. Sorry to rain on your NVA fantasy, young Galahad, but we need to keep you clean and uncompromised if at all possible, he said. You're here for one reason, and one reason only, to run point on Belladonna. Hold that lady's hand and blow in her ear, whatever you have to do to keep her functioning. No one is. Ever indispensable, but right now, you're about as close as it's possible to get. Don't worry, Duke's got this. You got your Dear John? Duke patted his shirt pocket, which seemed to contain nothing but a pen. Okay, Duke and I are going to leave through the main restaurant, all very cheerful in Goombata. We will be seen to leave on camera, and Chingling Ding over there will be seen to remain in his seat, ignoring us and watching Richie, whom we hope to God he hasn't actually photographed and phoned in yet. Rich, you finish your beer, pay the waiter, and exactly 5 minutes from the time we leave the table, you leave by the alley gate and turn right toward M Street. We assume our spook gook from 1600 will follow you. Do not step onto M, because then you will be on camera again and they will be able to place you in the alley. Just before you reach M Street there's a dumpster, and before the dumpster there is an unmarked glass door. It will be unlocked. Go in and walk down the hall like you own the place, and ignore anybody you meet. Here's those 5 cartons of Rothmans you asked for, said Cardinale, slipping him a plastic bag under the table. Put 'em in your backpack, and if anybody challenges you, tell them you got some plant life for the guys in IT. What is the place? Asked Bob. Cardinale chuckled. It's the Washington Post, and as a matter of liberal courtesy, the regime keeps their offices and street entrances free of surveillance. At the end of the hallway, you'll see another door that opens onto 15th Street. I'll pick you up there. In the meantime, Duke will have taken care of that monkey on your back. Duke, when he's down, you rob his ass. Take his gun and his badge and his wallet, and above all, make sure you get his phone. They probably won't buy that it's a street mugging, but we'll give it a shot. This is going to bring heat on Belladonna no matter what, but that's unavoidable now. Richie, you need to stay on top of her sitch over there. The minute she's in danger, we extract. Vital mission or not, that gal is a brave comrade, and I'm not handing her over to the Dershowitz needles if we can get her out in time. Duke, give me a call when you're done, and I'll pick you up on the fly in MC Ferson Square. Rich, you got all that? He demanded. Yes, sir, said Bob. Okay, your 5 minutes start now. Duke and Vinnie Skins got up and left the table. 5 minutes and a bit later, Richie Bob pushed open the glass door in the rear of the Washington Post building and strolled down a long, cool, air-conditioned and carpeted corridor. To his left, he could see through the glass walls a huge, busy and bustling newspaper office with desks and computers and a properly diverse cross-section of liberal yuppie humanity tapping on the computers. The Post was one of only about a dozen actual printed newspapers left in the United States, although their press run was subsidized by federal funds in the name of American heritage. Other than New York and the district itself, the paper was virtually unobtainable throughout the country, since almost no one read newspapers anymore. But the Post and the Gray Lady, the New York Times, as well as the Wall Street Journal, were the official voices of the United States government, and as such rated the dignity of the traditional printed page. To his consternation, Bob saw one of his regular customers coming out of one of the men's rooms on his right, one of the Post's reporters. Harrison Hart was a harried-looking man in his 30s with a frizz of blonde hair and glasses, and despite the air conditioning, His short-sleeved yellow pastel shirt was soaked with sweat, and his loose tie was drooping. "Richie!" Hart exclaimed. "Great! Just the man. I was going to give you a call. Got any butts on you?" Bob knew he shouldn't stop, and he also knew that although he hadn't looked back, the Asian Secret Service man might be behind him, and Duke might be about to shoot him or garrote him or whatever he was going to do right in the post building, if he hadn't been able to intercept the Fed outside. But blowing Hart off would be out of character for a pharmaceutical entrepreneur, and would cause his visit to be remembered. Bob looked around, and couldn't see anyone else in the long hallway, and so he motioned Hart back into the men's room. Once inside, he said, "I'm on my way to a drop, but I got a spare carton of Rothmans I can let you hold for a couple of G-notes," he told the newshound. Hart shuffled in his wallet. "All I have on me is a monkey," he said. "Can I owe you the rest?" "Come on, Harry, you know that's not how it works," said Richie. "Cash on delivery. It's $200 a pack. Tell you what, give me the monkey and I'll give you 3 packs. Call it a good customer discount." "You're a prince among men, Richie," said Hart gratefully, handing over the $500. Bob tore open one of the cartons of cigarettes, handed Hart 3 packs, and pocketed the money. A minute later, Campbell stepped out onto 15th Street and got into Vinnie Skin's late-model Lincoln, run on sinfully expensive premium gasoline instead of politically correct and even more expensive electric ups. Cardinale is on the phone, which he closed as soon as Bob got in. "Duke's done," he said. "Now we pick him up, and I try to think of some way to save a nigger's life. One of the things they don't teach you at Whidbey Island is how fucking ironic this job can get sometimes." Several minutes later, they spotted Duke lounging on a bench in Missy Ferson Square. He got into the back. "Flatface get his Dear John letter?" asked Cardinale. "Yeah." "He was devastated," replied Duke, "in the alley, and I went out the same way I came in. Nothing on camera." "What's Dear John?" asked Bob. Duke took out the pen from his shirt pocket and handed it over the seat to Bob. "Ordinary ballpoint pen, to all appearances," he explained. "It even writes. Take both ends and rotate them in opposite directions. Yeah, like that. They come apart. Now put them back together but in reverse. See? It's a little gun," exclaimed Bob admiringly. "Yeah. A single .22 caliber long rifle hollow point cartridge goes inside. Half a twist to the right to cock it, squeeze the clip on to fire it. Of course you got to be at point blank range, and you have to hit a vital spot in the head, through the eye or the ear, or in this case the base of the skull at a 45-degree angle. Best to use it like you would a knife, press it into the target's body, and use his own flesh and bone as a silencer. That's how the office writes somebody a Dear John letter." Bob handed the tiny weapon back to Duke. "You get the Gook's phone?" asked Cardinale. "Yeah, I checked it out while I was waiting for you before I took out the chip and tossed it. A lot of Secret Service numbers and stuff we can send to the analysis unit back home. And I found a photo of Richie and Belladonna, one of Richie and one of us 3 together. But I checked his last outgoing calls and he didn't make any from the garden. I don't think he transmitted the photos. The gods are watching over us as always," said Cardinale with a sigh of relief. "Okay, now how do we stop this Kanesha Knight rube-out? First problem, maybe insurmountable, is that they know the when and where and we don't," offered Duke practically. "If we have her private phone number and GPS, we can do a trace, or maybe just plain call her and warn her," suggested Bob. "And say what?" asked Cardinale. "Hi, Kanesha. We're the wicked racists you're planning on exterminating, but we have a soft spot in our hearts for brown sugar, so we figured we'd tip you the wink that your boss is going to throw you under the bus." "Literally? I don't even think we have her phone number. We try to keep up to date on data like that, but it's hard. CIA personnel are issued those souped-up satellite phones that actually acquire and use a different number for each call, like the old dial-up computers used a different dynamic IP address for every log-on." "CIA headquarters is in Langley, Virginia, right?" asked Bob. "Maybe they're planning on killing her in her own office building, but Georgia said she specifically overheard reference to a drive-by shooting. They'll probably attack Mammy K between her office and home. Do we know where she lives?" "Of course," said Cardinale. "In Southeast Anacostia. But we don't know if she's going straight home. She may be working late, she may have some kind of social function or work-related meeting elsewhere, or she may be going to a nightclub to boogie until dawn." Cardinale glanced at his watch. It's 8 o'clock now. We have no clue where she actually is. Belladonna just said it would be tonight. It may be going down as we speak, damn it. I notice Hunter Wallace is very noticeably out of town, said Duke, as if anyone would think he needs an alibi. The guilty flee where no man pursueth, and all that Shakespearean crap. That nigger Hatting is supposed to be his personal bodyguard. I wonder what excuse they'll come up with as to why he's not with his boss in New York. Maybe Hatting is the key, said Bob slowly. He's the only lead we have. He's the only individual we know who'll be in the right place at the right time. Any chance we could track him instead of the negress? Do Secret Service agents also get those special phones you talked about? Their phones use special encryption, and their GPS is masked against anything we've got or anything Birdie's got, said Cardinale. But his fucking Fleck card won't be masked. Duke, get Birdie on the horn and tell him we're coming over. Rush job. Money no object. Birdie's not office, warned Duke. He's just a player. We use him to track a federal agent. He's going to wise up to the fact that we do more than peddle cancer sticks and glazed ham. Cardinale nodded. I know, but this is an emergency. I may be overly pessimistic. We may actually be able to stop the whole fucking invasion if we prevent the ostensible casus belli. That means we have to give it a shot, no matter what the risk. Actually, if we can find out when and where, and we can interdict the hit successfully, I have an idea as to how we can turn this whole thing really to our advantage. But we have to get into the loop first. I'll talk to Birdie tonight. I'll tell him the bare minimum he needs to know, which is that we're gonna need his help like never before. But he doesn't get to ask question one. When it's over, he'll have enough money to retire for the rest of his life. But if he rats us out, we have friends who will douse him with gasoline, put a rubber tire around his neck, and touch a match to him. George Bird turned out to be a slender, geeky individual of indeterminate age, who lived in the house he had inherited from his mother on a quiet back street in Arlington. Cardinale told Bob on the way over that the land on which the house stood was worth tens of millions of dollars. But Bird refused to sell his childhood home and instead made his money the old-fashioned American way by stealing it. Birdie's kingdom was in his basement, a huge bay full of computer equipment and electronic gadgetry that looked like a mad scientist's laboratory, which in a way it was. A few taps on the keyboard got him into the Social Security database where he retrieved the SSN for one James Roscoe Hatting, and from then on, it was child's play for someone who knew how to hack into any computer system in the world, which apparently Bird could. He established an uplink with a private corporate satellite that was used by the world financial industry for its own assorted spying purposes, and piggybacked onto Bank of America's system. Within a matter of minutes, he had located the said James Roscoe Hatting. Got him, said Bird. Right now he's on basement level at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, but on a wild guess, I'd say you guys knew that already. What the hell are you into now, Vinny? Who is this guy? He's a guy who's planning on giving us some problems, so we're going to return the favor, said Cardinale. You need to keep us posted on his whereabouts for the next few hours. Duke and I need to get going now, but I'll leave my man Richie here with you, in case you need any help. What kind of help? You matrixed? Asked Birdie. I don't even know what that means, replied Bob. It means you don't know shit about computers, IT, or telecommunications. So how can you help? We're going to need you to follow this guy around for us all night, and Rich here will pass the info on to me, said Cardinale. Did I mention that money was no object? Here's a down payment. He tossed down a flat pack of $1,000 bills of enormous thickness that he pulled from his jacket pocket. It must have been a couple of $100,000 at least. Birdie eyed the money but did not pick it up. You're going to whack a federal agent, or somebody politically connected enough to be hanging at the White House at this time of night, he said. Not that I'm opposed in principle, mind, but something tells me I need to know what the itinerary is before I sign up for this cruise. So what the hell's going on? Okay, I'll tell you, said Bob quietly, before Cardinale could say a word. Never mind the money, Mr. Bird. That's not what this is about, not for us, although don't worry, you'll get paid. I'll level with you. If any of us get caught, we're dead, including you. What we're going to be doing is illegal as hell, but it's not wrong. I don't know if you see any difference in your own worldview, and if not, I'm not judging you, but that's the truth. We're going to take a break from being criminals, and we're going to be heroes for a while. I hope you'll join us. It may not make us much money, but it feels damned good. We're asking you to help save lives, maybe millions of lives, of people like ourselves. Good people. I know some of them. White people. Men, women, children, like my wife and my children and my family back where I come from, who are going to be murdered because they have white skin and because they won't bow down to a dog. That's what the hell is going on. Yeah? Said Bird, looking at them. Cardinale nodded. You know, Vin, I always figured your crew was a bit sharper than was right for our little slice of life, and there was something going on below ground with you lot. He picked up the pack of bills. Keep it. If you're from where I think you're from, I and my twinkling keyboard fingers are at your service, and there won't be any charge. Thanks, Birdie, said Cardinale. After they left, Bird said, Richie, right? I remember I made your fleck card. Not from Chicago, I dare say? Nope, replied Bob. Never been there. I'm sure you're here to keep an eye on me and maybe whack me if I crumple or turn rat on you. Fair enough. But I meant it. He nodded upward. My mom died in the upstairs bedroom. She never moved out of it for 8 years. She was on her way home from work one night when niggers threw her into a van and drove off with her. They dumped her 3 days later after they were through with her. Besides all the usual stuff they did to her, she was beaten within an inch of her life, with crushed vertebrae in her spine that paralyzed her and put her in a wheelchair, and brain damage so she could never talk or think right again. I dropped out of MIT and I took care of her from then on. Why didn't you go home to the Northwest after she died? Bob Campbell asked him. Partly because we're old Virginia people. Ever heard of William Byrd, the colonial plantation owner? Very famous. Historians used to write books and dissertations about his journals from the 17th century. I'm the last Byrd of Virginia, and I figured I should run out the clock here. But mostly it's because Mom left me this house, and if I didn't live here, the asshole developers would find some way to get hold if it, file an eminent domain writ or some such shit, use the law to steal my home like happens all the time in this country when the rich want what the poor have. Naboth had a vineyard, if you're into the Bible. That's why I need a heavy cash flow. I keep a team of lawyers on retainer just to fight off the corporations who want this little house. And they don't come cheap. They tear it down for condos, or boutiques or some such shit. Then there would be nothing left of her at all. Nothing she knew or touched, nothing that remembered her, if you get what I'm saying. I won't let her be extinguished by black animals, erased as if she never existed. I stay here so this house and I will still remember her together. And in the meantime, I make it a point to do whatever I can to fuck up the system. You understand that things may get really dangerous, and they may find out? Asked Bob. You may have to come home anyway, because you'll no longer have a choice if you want to live. Yeah, I get that, said Birdie. Look, I'm not Norman Bates. I know she's dead, and at some point, it gets time to move on. This looks like it might be a good way to segue into a new time and place. Don't worry, I'm in. All the way back at the Arlington warehouse, Cardinale quickly assembled a team of 6 men and 2 women, most of the wet workers attached to the DC station. He explained his plan to them. Betsy spoke up, boss, all due respect and all that, but are you sure you haven't flipped your lid? Maybe, admitted Cardinale. Look, comrades, I know this makes the whole operation a lot more dangerous. One thing we learned back in the day is when you go in to kill quick and vanish. No frills, no conversation, no 3 musketeers swashbuckling. Just get the job done and then break contact with the scene fast before Fatty or the cops can react. I know this violates that basic principle. I suppose that logically we should just go in and take out everybody, including the CIA mammy, make a clean sweep of it. But remember, we have a larger mission here, and there is a big picture. Kanesha Knight is an affirmative action employee these morons put into one of the most sensitive positions in their government for the sole reason that she's got a pair of black knockers. One of our most vital tactics has always been to take out key people in the enemy regime and ruling class who either pose a direct threat to the Republic, or often someone whom our intelligence and political analysts predict might develop into a threat in years to come. Nip their asses in the bud. But there's a flip side to that. Sometimes an enemy individual is such a complete incompetent dipshit that it's actually better for the Republic's interests in the long run for them to remain where they are and let them gum up the works from within. In my opinion, this applies to Mammy K. She believes we're in contact with UFOs, for Christ's sake. The Americans gave control of one of their major intelligence services to a kook for idiotic political reasons. And stupidity like that is a gift from the gods to us that we shouldn't waste. We need to make sure this black bitch stays where she is, but in a state of such complete paranoia and confusion that we can knock the whole Central Intelligence Agency out of the game, at least for a while, and force the Americans to deal with the major public embarrassment before they can get her out of there and get the CIA back up and running. Betsy, you'll be taking the most risk here, so if you have any doubts about it. No, actually I think it will be a real hoot, she said with a giggle. Hey, if that's the way you want to play it, I'll render an Oscar-winning performance. That is, if we can figure out when and where Jimbo is going to make his move, said Duke dubiously. We don't know how many hostiles there will be, or what the kill zone will be like. Duke, back in the day we used to call improvised tickles like that floats, said Cardinale with a grin. Remember? Yeah, I remember, and also remember some volunteers getting killed like that, replied Duke. But it's not like we have any choice. Cardinale pulled up a map on his computer. The NAR agents gathered around. 3 teams. Junebug, Frankie G, Rudolph, and Williamson are red team. You guys take the blue van. Trisha, Duke, and Little John are gold team. You get the SUV, the Mountaineer. Betsy, you ride with me in the red Dodge. The obvious problem is that we don't yet know where they're planning the ambush, whether it's in the green zone itself or somewhere on the Virginia side. I'm going to take an educated guess that it will be in the DC ESMA, because our intel indicates they plan to use some unmasked white shooters whom they will then Photoshop with the faces of some of our own people back home, in order to try and claim that we whacked Mammy Kanesha. This means that they will need to do it in some place they know is covered by CCTV, and surveillance over here isn't nearly as comprehensive as it is in the ESMA. I'm guessing again when I assume it will be at her house, which is at this address here, in Anacostia. Yeah, I know, that's a lot of guesswork, and we need to be ready to change plans quick. We go over into the district across the 14th Street Bridge at 5-minute intervals so we don't all go through the checkpoint at once. We drive to Anacostia, and then we run a parallel patrol through a 12-block radius around her house, with 1 double back and 1 lateral slide per circuit. If you were absent that day at SOI on Whidbey Island, then get somebody who remembers the course to drive. It will fool whatever dozy cop or affirmative action nigger is monitoring the street cameras tonight, at least for a while. We'll have to assess the tactical situation on the fly, and guys, if it looks like we have to just waste these bastards without playing my merry little jest, then that's the way we roll. Psychological warfare is all very well and good, but I don't want anybody killed because I feel in a waggish mood tonight. After more planning and going through projected possible scenarios, Cardinale issued his crew their uniform for the evening's festivities, black nylon jumpsuits and full motorcycle helmets with black-tinted face visors and rows of blinking green and yellow LED lights over the visor and around the back of the helmets. He also issued 2 of his men with special weapons, concussion and stun grenades, and handheld laser pistols of an experimental prototype the NDF's Technical Warfare Division had come up with and shipped to them, to see if the things were any good in the field. So far, Cardinale had found no practical opportunity to use them for anything. Betsy came back into the room wearing her costume for the evening, a long flowing white dress with a lot of sheer muslin drapery. You look like Princess Leia, said Junebug, a scarred and tattooed 200-pound man with a grizzled beard. She's supposed to, up to a point, said Cardinale. Remember, the idea is to leave CIA Director Kanesha Knight alive but confused, and convinced she was rescued from an assassination attempt by space aliens. Cardinale's phone rang, and he flipped it open. Yeah? Moncoid on the move, said Bob Campbell on the other end. Okay, said Cardinale. That's good, because we're ready to roll here. Let me know if he crosses into Virginia. You got it, said Bob. I'll get back to you in a bit. Last-minute potty trips and then we mount up, people, called Cardinale. The game is afoot, as Sherlock Holmes said. Follow me down to Rosslyn, then we circle for a while until we hear whether or not we go into the green zone. Everybody keep their phone headsets on conference with full encrypt. We'll probably have to say some things in the clear tonight we really shouldn't. Let's just hope DHS's techs haven't caught up to Bertie's genius yet. A few WPB agents hit the John. Then they went down to their assigned vehicles, fired up the engines, and headed down Wilson Boulevard toward the Potomac. Betsy was driving the Dodge. Just as they rolled under the gleaming skyscrapers of Rosslyn, Cardinale got another call. He stopped. "Looks like he's on foot, moving back and forth short distances," said Campbell. "Setting up his ambush," said Cardinale. "Where?" 3051 Massachusetts Avenue Northwest, said Bob. "The South African Embassy. Our feathered friend here was able to zero in on Mammy's card as well. Apparently, the company's Fleck encryption is out of date. They forgot to do their bi-monthly switchover, or they just couldn't be bothered." "Can he confirm she's on the premises?" asked Cardinale. "Affirmative. Maybe she's attending some kind of cocktail party or reception celebrating the end of apartheid all those years ago, or something. No, I remember now, she's banging the nigger ambassador, discovering her roots and all that crap. His root, anyway. Can our friend let us know when Aunt Jemima departs from the embassy?" "He can," Bob assured him. "He's trying to hack into the DC Metro surveillance room now so he can access the cameras around, and inside the embassy so we can get an actual visual and not just the blip from her card. Okay, we're on our way, and let's hope we don't get there too damned late. Keep me posted." Cardinale hung up and clicked conference. "Listen up, boys and girls. Looks like they're going to hit the target as she leaves the South African Embassy on Massachusetts Avenue. Mammy's limo will be either parked on the street or more likely in the embassy courtyard, which is accessed off Massachusetts through an electronically controlled iron gate. I figure our main monkoid will have at least 3 other shooters, so we'll extrapolate 2 hostile vehicles, both parked on either side of the embassy, to box the limo in when they leave, and some kind of anti-tank weapon or explosive device to blow up or disable the limo and force Mammy out. This will be tricky, people. A firefight in the dark. We have night vision goggles and sights in our helmets, but so will they. We'll approach via Rock Creek Parkway, park our own vehicles on 30th Street and Whitehaven Street, and enter the fire zone on foot. This is Embassy Row, people. More cameras per square foot than anywhere else in the district. So from the moment we park, we will be on camera and the clock will be ticking. Remember your E&A procedures we went over back at the house. 30 minutes later, at a little past 11 o'clock, the WPB vehicles were in place just off Massachusetts Avenue. "Don't get out until I say so, but be ready. Helmets on, weapons locked and loaded," Cardinale told them on the phone. He himself pulled on his own mask, that of an extraterrestrial gray from countless science fiction movies over the past half-century. Several minutes later, he got another call from Bob Campbell. "We're into the embassy visual feed to the DC cops. They're leaving now. She's in the courtyard, and the driver's holding the door open for her. Can you cut the feed and blind the cops?" asked Cardinale. Bob spoke briefly with Bertie on his end, then came back. "Yes, do it, now." There was a brief pause. "Done," said Bob. "They'll notice the outage, but you've got a few minutes before they react." Cardinale got onto his conference. "Move out, now stay low, and watch for the enemy shooters." He and Betsy exited their car. The whole WPB squad began moving northward across the well-trimmed embassy lawns of Britain, Brazil, and Bolivia. Ahead, on the right side of the street, they could see and hear the iron gate to the inner courtyard of the South African Embassy clattering open, and a long-stretch limousine containing the CIA director and her driver slid out into the street. Simultaneously, the doors to a car on the right side of the street opened, and 2 white men in jeans and sweatshirts, unmasked, got out. Beneath the streetlights, Cardinale could see that they were hefting Heckler and Koch MP5 submachine guns under their arms, ironically the same weapons that most of the circus crew were packing. Cardinale ran forward on tiptoe. The 2 Secret Service agents were so intent on their target in the limo that they didn't hear him until he was 10 feet behind them. He shot one of them in the back of the head with the odd-looking laser gun from TWD, which resembled an LED flashlight with a pistol grip. The weapon zapped and smoked, and the federal agent dropped like a sack of potatoes. The second agent had quick reflexes. He whirled and gaped at what appeared to be a space alien in a suit aiming a ray gun at him, but managed to squeeze off a 3-round burst from the submachine gun before Cardinale shot him in the chest 3 times, noting with pleased approval that the laser cut through the man's Kevlar vest like it was cardboard. But the gunfire gave the game away. "Now, hit 'em!" he shouted. There was an explosion up ahead. The 2nd Secret Service team had expertly rolled incendiary grenades under the limousine as it reached the head of the embassy driveway. and the vehicle was enveloped in flames. It probably would have been safe to stay inside, since the limo, in addition to being armored, was fireproof. But instead of hitting the gas and getting the hell out of there like personal protection SOP dictated, the two Negro occupants bailed out of the car in a wild panic. Cardinale could see his own men wearing the blinking motorcycle helmets, running toward the flaming car. In the poor light, they did indeed resemble weird interstellar robots of some kind. "Can you see the hostiles?" he shouted into his phone. "I got 2 of them down on this side, 3 standing this side," shouted back Duke. Kanesha Knight and her black guard were running for the embassy front doors. "Grenades!" yelled Cardinale, but it was unnecessary. The concussion and stun grenades were already flying through the air and landed at the feet of Kanesha and the driver. The grenades flashed and thumped the whole street, and the 2 of them collapsed on the embassy's broad front steps. Machine gun fire erupted up and down the street, muzzle flashes flickering like sheet lightning. Windows were lighting up in the embassy and black faces were peering outside. Cardinale turned around. "Bets, you still with me?" "Yeah, but only because I talked you out of making me wear high heels," she said from behind him. "Get those peeping coons away from the windows," he ordered. "We don't want anybody coming outside trying to drag our targets indoors." Betsy braced herself on the hood of a parked car, raised her own MP5 and methodically sprayed the windows along the front of the embassy with bullets, striking sparks and screaming ricochets off the stately stone facade. "Duke, how are we doing?" he said into the phone. "2 white assholes down, sir," reported Duke. The guy in the mask ran off. "That must have been the nigger. You and Tricia take perimeter. Everybody else close around like we talked about," ordered Cardinale. The WPB team appeared on the embassy lawn in the hot and muggy night, eerie figures in black, with weapons at the ready, cylindrical, helmets blinking green and yellow, looking alien indeed in the pale light from the street lamps. One of the figures was walking slowly, leaning and cursing under his breath. "Who's that hurt?" demanded Cardinale. "Me, sir," said June Bug. "Took a couple on the vest, bashed the shit out of my innards, but I'll live." "You sure the other hostiles are all down? We don't want to be interrupted." "Yes, sir, except for the nigger who ran like a bunny," replied June Bug. "One fool wasn't wearing a vest, and I damn near cut him in half." Kanesha Knight and her CIA bodyguard, Arnold Two Toes Jefferson, were moaning and beginning to crawl to their feet. Jefferson was clawing inside his jacket for his gun. Cardinale walked over and zapped a laser beam through his nappy head. The moncoid collapsed and Cardinale kicked the gun away into the bushes. "Those things work, sir?" asked Williamson. "Yeah, at close range," said Cardinale. "Wouldn't trust it much beyond 40 feet or so, and the beam is about the width of a pin, so you really have to hit a vital spot. You ready, Bets?" "Give me a sec," she said. She handed her submachine gun to Williamson, and then pulled a thin latex mask out of her bra that she put on, another alien mask. Kanesha Knight rose shakily to her knees, shaking her head to clear her vision from the stun grenade. "Haul her ass up," ordered Cardinale. "She needs to pay attention to this." 2 of the office ops stepped forward, grabbed Kanesha's arms, and jerked her to her feet like a drunken Oprah. Cardinale gave her a good slap on her rubbery black jowls. "Okay," said Betsy. "Showtime," said Cardinale. He drew an automotive flare from his back pocket and popped it, then Betsy stepped in front of it. The stunned and disoriented Kanesha Knight looked around, shaking her head trying to focus. She saw herself surrounded by what appeared to be robots with blinking lights on their heads, and an alien white woman with the face of an ET wearing some kind of toga or Greek goddess outfit, who was outlined in a bright and shimmering light. "Huh?" said Kanesha. Betsy raised her arms. "Hearken unto me, Kanesha Knight. I am the Princess Haatana, ruler of Alpha Centauri and emissary from the Quantum Lords of the Galactic Council," she intoned. "I bring you greetings from the Quantum Lords and a communique of great importance to your world. The individual known among men as Hunter Wallace is an evil being in the service of the dark potentates of the Crab Nebula. He has been sent to this planet to sow conflict and suffering among humankind by starting a wicked and unnecessary war against the nation you call the Northwest Republic. It is the will of the Quantum Lords that this war must be prevented, and you, Kanesha Knight, must bear witness to all the world as a messenger of peace and love and reconciliation. Go now, Kanesha Knight. Bear our witness to planet Earth and impart to all of humanity the universal gesture of peace and perfect understanding. Say what? Said Kanesha. I give it to you now, Kanesha Knight. Betsy lifted her thumbs to her ears, extended her palms, and waved them. In this sign shall you triumph, Kanesha Knight. End communication. Cardinale stepped forward and kicked Kanesha brutally in the solar plexus, knocking her to the ground, then threw the flare up onto the roof of the embassy. All right, we're out of here, he told his crew. Get to your E&E points, dispose of the vehicles and gear like I told you, and work your way back over the river by noon tomorrow. Let's go. Back in the Dodge, Cardinale pulled off his alien mask, as did Betsy. What the hell was that universal gesture of peace and understanding crap? He asked. That wasn't in the script. I just threw that in there, said Betsy. I want to see if I can make her give herself monkey ears and flap them in public. Hunter Wallace was not a happy president when he arrived back in Washington on Air Force One that night. Special Agent Lee Lyons met him at Andrews Air Force Base and informed the president that 5 Secret Servicemen were dead, 4 of them in the botched attempt on Kanesha Knight at the South African Embassy. And one more, Victor Chan, had been found dead in an alley off L Street, with a single small-caliber bullet in the back of his head, fired at close range. Chan was robbed, said Lyons as they rode into the city in the presidential motorcade. His rage at the loss of his men was barely under control. His wallet, his gun, and his badge and his phone were gone, but I'm not buying it, sir. This was some kind of professional hit, my guess is by the same crew that came to Kanesha Knight's rescue at the embassy later. What the hell was Chan doing in the alley to begin with? Asked Wallace. He was checking up on your personal services assistant, sir, Lyons told him. It was routine. She went out for supper and she stopped in a notorious deadfall on L Street, Shel Silverstein's Garden of Delights. Yeah, I know it, said Wallace. I used to eat there a lot, as a congressman. Great doner kebabs. Kind of an odd coincidence, don't you think, Mr. President? Asked Lyons. Miss Halberstam drops off the grid for an hour. The man I send to check on her ends up dead in a hit that reeks of a pro job. And then a few hours later we get this fuck-up on Massachusetts Avenue, with a full-armed squad of very proficient gunmen rising up from the earth just in time to shoot our men all to hell, save the target's ass, and then disappear. You think Georgia Halberstam tipped off somebody on the night termination? Asked Wallace skeptically. And how would she know about it? I know what you're thinking, Lee, but I don't talk business with Georgia or any of my PSAs, not before, during, or after. I'm not that stupid. You clock all her movements around the White House every minute she's there. Has she ever done anything suspicious? Listened at the keyhole in the Situation Room? She's never even been down there, and her access card won't let her into the cabinet room or anywhere else important. Any hard grounds for suspicion, other than the fact that she was born in Montana? No, sir, conceded Lyons sullenly. You handled her vetting. You find anything besides a lot of drunk and stoned wild child crap in school? Anything political or racial at all? No, sir, said Lyons. The existing system was designed to make sure that even if somebody ever did slip a Matahari on me, she couldn't learn anything important.
I know, sir, said Lyons. But I've got a job to do.
I know, Lee, said Wallace. Look, the fact is, I really like this girl, and I'd like to get her to extend her contract. I'm not saying don't do your job, just don't get sidetracked unless you have some real evidence against Georgia. Keep on the Chan thing, by all means, but, it could be a simple street robbery after all. A well-dressed man in an alley might present a tempting target for some Hufflepuff looking for money to buy a pack of smokes. I'm not downplaying the loss of one of your guys, Lee, but this mess at the embassy is the important thing to concentrate on. You say Jimbo survived? He took the better part of valor, sir, replied Lyons dryly. And so he should have done, or we'd have no fucking idea at all what happened, said Wallace. What does Jimbo say happened? He said he and his team were attacked by space aliens, Mr. President, said Lyons through tight lips. What? He says they were robots with blinking lights on their heads, and he says he also saw a female alien wearing a wedding dress, Lyons informed him. Deadpan. Kanesha Knight says the same thing. She says the female alien was a princess from beyond the stars who gave her a message for planet Earth. Holy mother of pearl, muttered Wallace. Do you think your men were killed by eats? Bullshit, said Lyons succinctly. Space aliens don't carry automatic weapons and stun grenades. The FBI extracted 9mm slugs from the bodies that their ballistics lab says are from MP5S, not the ones our guys were packing, so they didn't shoot themselves. It's true that 3 of the casualties were killed by some kind of laser, but we're working on weapons like that ourselves. So who could pull something like this off? Asked Wallace. You never fought the NVA, Mr. President, or you'd know the answer to that, said Lyons. I was a federal anti-terrorist officer in Spokane for 2 years, sir. The Goots used to hit us like this every damned week. These motherfuckers were WPB or CMI or some kind of special squad out of the NAR. They knew we were hitting the night woman tonight, and they knew why, and they decided to monkey wrench us. They know about Operation Strikeout, and my guess is, when our military moves on the Republic, they're going to be ready and waiting for us. What rank were you in the Fat Po, Lee? Asked President Wallace. I was a captain, sir. 2 years in Spokane, and then I was in Portland with Delmar Partman. Not a general, then? Not qualified to advise the commander-in-chief on strategy and other big-picture stuff?
Lyons had finally had enough. No, sir. Just a soldier who has fought these men before. Just someone who can tell you from personal experience that if you underestimate the Northmen, the United States will pay in more blood than you can imagine.
Wallace was silent for the remainder of the ride back into Washington. Owing to the late hour of his retiring, President Hunter Wallace gave orders that he was not to be awakened until 9 a.m. on June 19th, but at 8, his bedside phone rang. He woke up and picked up the phone. Yes? He said groggily. It's me, said the voice of Angela Herron. Turn on CNN. What? Asked Wallace. Why? That Meshuggah Schwarzer Kanesha Knight, screamed Herron in rage. That shitskin bitch. She's on TV making a fool out of herself and fucking our whole pooch right up the ass, goddamn. Turn on fucking CNN now. Okay. He set the phone receiver down and fished around on his nightstand for the television remote. Beside him, Georgia stirred sleepily. Morning, handsome, she said. What's up? Angela's got her panties in a twist about something, said Wallace grumpily. You seen the remote? Don't you remember what you were doing with it last night? She giggled. Where did you put it? Hey, babe, I'd kind of like a cigarette. You mind? What? He asked. Oh, yeah, sure. He took a key off his nightstand, reached over and unlocked the handcuffs behind Georgia's back. She rubbed her wrists and fished a pack of cigarettes and a lighter out of her purse on her own nightstand and lit one while Wallace groped around on the floor beside the bed. He found the remote and clicked on CNN. He saw Kanesha Knight's chocolate face on the screen. She looked dazed, disheveled, and possibly drugged, her eyes. Puffy in her normally exquisitely coiffed and straightened hairdo was frizzed out, giving her a wild buckwheat look. The tagline read, CIA Director Kanesha Knight, and the kicker read, talks about last night's assassination attempt. Her enunciation was even more clear and elegant than usual. I have been appointed by the Quantum Lords of the Galaxy to deliver the message of Princess Hautana of Alpha Centauri, and I speak now to President Hunter Wallace. He must immediately cease his plans to invade the Northwest Republic. Instead, we must win the hearts and minds of the Northwest racists. We must approach with the universal gesture of peace, reconciliation, and perfect knowledge. Kanesha Knight then held her thumbs up to her ears, opened her palms and waved them. She looked like she had monkey ears. Jesus Christ on a raft, screamed Wallace in horror. He picked up the phone. Angela, what the fuck? She checked herself out of the hospital, and she's holding her little press conference in the parking lot. Well, do something, Wallace demanded of his press secretary. I did, snarled Angela. I dragged Judge Weinberg out of bed and I got him to sign an involuntary committal order on her, and I just faxed it over there. I'm sending the U.S. Marshals to grab her and get her ass over to St. Elizabeth's. Oh, okay. Looks like the hospital got the committal order. Wallace looked at the screen. The director of the Central Intelligence Agency was now fleeing down a row of parked cars, pursued by 2 burly young men wearing white coats. The assembled media crews were pelting after them, and the picture was jumpy and confused, but every now and then Kanesha turned and waggled her palms beside her ears at her pursuers. Sweet Jesus, moaned Wallace. Now what? The cat's out of the bag, Hunter, said Angela Herron. Call the Joint Chiefs and tell them to initiate Operation Strikeout right now. The Nazis have been warned now, and we have to move fast. Yeah, looks like we have no choice. Wallace hung up and dialed the phone. This is the President of the United States, he said to the Pentagon. Track down Admiral Brava and get him on the phone to me now. What's up, babe? Asked Georgia, laying back on her pillows and dragging on her cigarette. That Knight woman sounds like she's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. What was she saying about invading the Northwest Republic? Well, I suppose there's no harm in mentioning it, since now everybody in the whole goddamned world knows, said Wallace in a sullen rage. Unless you already know because you're a spy. Lee Lyons thinks you're a spy for the Northmen. Are you? Georgia gave a silvery laugh. Yeah, I know. Agent Lyons is paranoid about me because I'm from Montana. No, Hunter, I'm not a spy, and if I was, I wouldn't be a spy for the same bastards who broke up my family. I hate them. I explained that to Lee, but he probably didn't believe me. That's cool. It's his job to be suspicious of everybody. Now France, them I might spy for, so I could go and live in Paris afterwards. The phone rang and Wallace picked it up. Admiral Brava, he said. You saw that lunacy with Kanesha on CNN? Well, then you know why I have to tell you to initiate Operation Strikeout right now. What do I mean by right now? I mean 5 minutes ago. Yes, well, readjust your damned schedules. Jesus Christ, man, it's only 2 days early. Use computers if it's too hard for your clerks or whoever to do it in their heads. That's what they're for. Yes, I know they're not in position yet, which is why you have to get a fucking move on and get them into position. So what if it's in the daytime? The planes will be 30,000 feet in the air, and don't give me that horse shit about how the Nazis have got ray guns. Christ, man, you're sounding as crazy as Kanesha Knight with her aliens. While Hunter Wallace argued and expostulated and shouted at the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff on the phone, Georgia rolled over in bed, fished in her purse for her cigarette pack, and came up with both the pack and her phone in her hand. Shielding the phone from Wallace's view with her bare back, she texted out a message. Like all American girls in her teenaged years, Georgia had acquired the skill and dexterity to enter long and complex text messages quickly and accurately, and it stood her in good stead now. Hey Talia, want to catch a late breakfast? I feel like some green eggs and ham. Oh, sorry, you don't eat ham, do you? Just the green eggs for you then. 2 minutes later, Bob, who was sitting in an Arlington diner with Vinnie Skins and Duke and Betsy, heard his belladonna phone beep, and Betsy's did the same. They opened their phones. Cardinal looked up and saw Betsy staring at the phone with tears welling from her eyes. What is it? He asked. Bob held up his phone. Green eggs and ham, he said dismally. Cardinale buried his face in his hands. We've failed, he said in an exhausted voice. This is what we were supposed to prevent. It's why they call us the War Prevention Bureau. It's the whole reason we exist, and now we've failed. He's insane, shouted Brava in the emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs in the bowels of the Pentagon. How is it that somebody who can wrap those yay-saying leeches in Congress around his little finger can't wrap his mind around the basic facts of logistics? How is it that somebody that smart doesn't grasp the fact that real war is not a computer game, and that moving hundreds of thousands of men, vehicles, aircraft, and all their equipment is not something that can be done with the click of a function key? Did the Commander-in-Chief give us an order or not? Said buzz-cut Marine Corps Commandant Louis Battaglia. If he gave us an order to move 2 days early, then we move 2 days early. It's that goddamned simple. It's the Delmar Partman way. It's the Marine way. Nobody bothered to remind the jarhead that Partman had been defeated and killed while mutinying and disobeying an order from his commander-in-chief. The 1st and 2nd bomber groups are ready at Minot, and we can launch the 3rd and 4th groups directly from Wright-Patterson in Ohio within an hour, said Bellows from the Air Force. That's the B-52s, right? Asked Brava. Check, confirmed Bellows. 3rd and 4th wings have already got their ordnance payloads loaded on board, and they were just about to lift off for dispersal to their forward fields at Buckley in Colorado and Campo Maldonado in Aztec, Nevada. It would be simple enough to have them make their first mission runs over the NAR, the racist entity, and then return to those fields. Plus, we can hit them with the Tomahawks on a few hours' notice. What about the Stratofortresses, fighter cover? Asked Brava. Not necessary, said Bellows confidently. The enemy don't have any real fighters except some jerry-rigged civilian jets that are no match for a 52, and I think the alien ray gun story is crap. It's Nazi disinformation is all. This will be a milk run. A lot of milk runs. Task Force Soaring Eagle is still off Southern California, said Brava. They can launch their planes and missiles from further out, I suppose, but it's still going to take some time to get them within optimum range of the enemy coastline while still staying out of range of those damned Russian missile batteries on shore. We calculated all our fuel and other requirements based on kickoff at 0100 hours on June 21st to make sure we hit the bastards in the dark for psychological warfare purposes. General Scheisskopf? The three main invasion columns are now in the process of coalescing in eastern Montana as Operation Blast Furnace transmogrifies into Operation Strikeout, like Desert Shield did into Desert Storm, Scheisskopf reported. Combined Group North was scheduled to begin crossing into Canada at 2200 hours tonight. We can speed things up, I suppose, although it will still give the Jerrys a lot more warning time than I'm happy with. But Battaglia is right. An order from the commander-in-chief is an order. How about our gallant allies from the Latin world? I will telephone El Presidente as soon as we finish here and tell him we're moving early, and could he oblige us by moving up his country's own assault from the south? Said Brava with a scowl. And what reason will you give him? Asked Scheisskopf. That our Director of Central Intelligence experienced a psychotic breakdown because an assassination attempt scared her shitless, and she went on worldwide TV babbling about messages from a princess from Alpha Centauri, and at the same time blabbed out the secret of the most hush-hush American military operation since the Normandy invasion? And that our Commander-in-Chief jumps whenever his press secretary says frog? I think the Jefe will know all that, said Brava dryly. They do get CNN in Aslan, you know. Hunter Wallace was not the only president who was awakened by an early morning phone call, although it was only a bit early since State President Morehouse of the Northwest American Republic in Olympia usually got up at 6 a.m. anyway. He picked up his bedside phone. Yes, he said. It was Frank Barrow, Minister of Security. Red, I just heard from Charlie Randall, who in turn just heard from our man in D.C., and he just heard from Belladonna. It's green eggs and ham, sir. They're coming 2 days early. Hunter Wallace has scheduled a worldwide telecast for noon EDT, so we figure the first bombers will be on their way in a couple of hours. Thanks, Frank. Plan 17 is in effect as of now. Alert Dr. Cord and tell him we need to prepare to hit them with rot fungus, and tell John and Carter to begin the reserve call-up. Already done, sir, said Barrow. Good. Can you track down Charlie and ask him to give me a call? Will do, sir. Barrow hung up. Morehouse got out of bed, pulled on his robe, and walked down the hall in Longview House to one of the guest bedrooms. His secretary, Ray Ridgway's daughter Annette, and her husband, one of his aides-de-camp named Colonel Eric Sellers, were staying in the presidential mansion to be close at hand when he needed them. Their children were already in one of the designated safe areas for the families of top government and party people. This was not the matter of privilege it might have seemed. The Republic's leadership had to have their minds as clear and free of worry as possible, and the Americans were notorious for victimizing and retaliating against the families of those they hated. Morehouse knocked on their door. Annette? Eric? They opened the door. Eric Sellers was in PT shorts, and Annette pulling on a nightgown. Good morning, Mr. President, said the youthful colonel. During the War of Independence, he and his wife had been teenaged NVA, volunteers with the party's intelligence apparatus, the 3rd Section. Good morning, Eric. Morehouse said. Sorry to get you up so early, but it looks like the Americans have jumped the gun on us. We need to get up to Fort Lewis right away. They're coming? Asked Annette. The bombers are probably already in the air. Annette, I hate to ask, but could you go to the kitchen and whip up some sandwiches real quick? We don't know when we'll get a chance to eat. Yes, sir, she said. Back in his own bedroom, Morehouse was pulling on his own clothes when the phone rang. He answered it. Hey, Charlie, green eggs and ham, is it? I'm afraid so, sir, said the Australian. You got that from Belladonna? Yes, sir, said Randall. Is she all right? How exposed is she? Asked Morehouse. There was an incident last night. One of their goons was following her and Cardinale had to take him out. I'll give you a full report when I see you up at Lewis. They may be onto her, but our lads pulled off a neat little hat trick last night that I hope will distract them. Ever seen a CIA director lose her marbles on worldwide telly? I beg your pardon, asked Morehouse. Turn on the news before you leave and check it out, said Randall with a chuckle. I asked Cardinale about Belladonna, and as of 8 this morning Eastern Time, she was still in the presidential sack. He says she's holding strong and keeping her cool. Tell Vince that the very second she looks to be in any danger, extract her and get her and that baby somewhere safe," said Morehouse. "We may be about to lose everything, and maybe we can't prevent that, but we can damned well prevent those monsters from getting hold of at least one more white woman to torture and degrade. I remember what they did to Kathy Frost." "So do I, sir," said Randall. At 0945 hours Rocky Mountain Time, Major Edwin Browder of the United States Air Force and his fully armed and loaded B-52 Stratofortress bomber out of Wright-Patterson AFB became the first hostile American aircraft to cross into the Northwest Republic's airspace, somewhere over Deer Lodge Pass, Montana. They were headed for Missoula, along with the rest of Flight 95, a total of 6 B-52 seconds whose mission was to reduce the city to rubble with bunker buster and incendiary bombs. Specifically, they were to level the University of Montana and its pioneering scientific research and development facility, where for the past 12 years flocks of eggheads and science geeks and inventors had been working on all kinds of projects, everything from studying the true biology and genetics of race, which was forbidden everywhere else in the world, to allegedly making secret weapons out of supposed extraterrestrial technology, if the CIA could be believed. In an interesting bit of irony, their bombing run on would almost certainly involve destroying or damaging the house on Daly Avenue where Georgia Myers had lived as a child. "ETA to target 14 minutes, said the navigator in Browder's headphones. "Any bogeys or flak yet, sir?" "Nothing at all," laughed Browder. "What are these Peckerwoods gonna do? Catapult a grizzly bear at us? The few planes they have are prop jobs, for Christ's sake. Don't worry, guys, the only thing we have to be concerned about is how good the chow hall will be down at Buckley. We'll drop our load and be there in time for lunch." A strange blue light flickered up through the cloud cover, but the sun at 30,000 feet was so bright that Browder wasn't even sure he had seen anything. "What was that?" he asked his CO pilot. "What was what, sir?" replied Captain Isfahani, an Iranian-American. "Nothing," replied Browder with a shrug. But then it came again, a thin pencil of blue light that appeared and disappeared in front of him. "No, that. Did you see it?" "Sir, looks like we've got some kind of enemy radar tracking system locking onto us," said Isfahani, pointing to one of his instruments. "It may be anti-aircraft. Should we launch?" Then the aircraft was struck at the speed of light by a high-energy plasma ray, energizing all the subatomic particles it came into contact with, be they air or metal or human flesh, and channeling those particles all into a one-directional flow along the line of the beam. It sheared off the port wing of the B-52 like scissors cutting a sheet of paper in half. The overbalanced aircraft went into a spin at 600 miles per hour and plummeted toward the ground. The centrifugal force caused the entire crew to black out, and so they were unconscious when the plane hurtled into a mountainside in the Beaverhead Forest. Within 40 seconds, all 5 of the other B-52 seconds were falling out of the sky in flames and pieces. Georgia's childhood home was safe for now. At noon Eastern Daylight Time, President Hunter Wallace addressed the nation from behind the desk in the Oval Office. He looked grim yet elegant in his Armani suit. "My fellow Americans," he said, "almost 8 years ago, you did me the honor of electing me to the highest office in the land. You did so on the strength of my promise to you that I would bend every effort of my being toward the sublime goal of righting a cataclysmic error of history that has shattered our beloved country and shaken the very roots of democracy. I refer to the loss of 3.5 states of this indivisible union of ours to a racist military dictatorship controlled by a murderous criminal conspiracy." From the NAR Command Center at Fort Lewis, President Henry Morehouse and the full Council of State were watching the address. Morehouse had a phone in his hand. "Initiate rot fungus," he ordered. He set down the phone. "Right, comrades, the upload has begun. I am told that this should take about 90 seconds, and then we will know whether or not we have a chance to win this thing on a level playing field." On the screen, President Wallace was droning on. "Throughout the entire history of this country, we have had a problem with hatred. Racism and sexism and homophobia have been the curse of American society. These evils have stained this country's past, and they stain its present. But I have come here today, my fellow Americans, to tell you That stain is about to be erased for all time. This morning I gave the order to all branches of the United States military to—" The screen froze. Hunter Wallace sat behind the desk, caught with his mouth wide open, like a big-mouthed bass snared by a fishhook, and a soundtrack that consisted of a barking little dog, possibly a chihuahua, filled the room. "What the hell is that?" asked Morehouse. "It's kind of a screensaver for rot fungus," said Frank Barrow. "It tells us that the virus is still active and functional. It also resolves for all time the question of whether or not Dr. Joseph Cord has a sense of humor. He does, sort of. From now on, every time anybody on Earth turns on their television set, unless they're in Russia or serviced by Russian satellites, or unless they have direct cable access, they will see and hear Hunter Wallace barking at them. Since most cable services rely on satellite feeds as well for various programming, that's going to cut down American television viewership considerably. The whole country will probably go into withdrawal." "Any word on blue light, Bill?" asked Morehouse. "The bad news is that it's not 100% effective," reported Air Marshal Basquine. "There were some unit malfunctions, and our techs are stretched, flying all over the eastern frontier trying to troubleshoot and debug them. There were some bomb and missile strikes within the Republic in Spokane, Boise, Kalispell, and some of the military targets. There have been a couple of dozen casualties that we know of so far. The next bit of bad news is that the bombing wave from the Naval Task Force hasn't hit the West Coast yet." Basquine took a deep breath. "The good news is that the first wave of bombers took something on the order of 80% casualties, with over 400 enemy aircraft down, and a number of those who escaped did so because they panicked when they realized their planes were going down all around them, and they simply dumped their bombs, turned tail and ran. We think some of the hits around the east may not be actual bombs or cruises, but falling debris from the destroyed enemy aircraft, and frankly, there's not much we can do about that. Basically, Mr. President, blue light works. We have broken American air power." Cheers and applause rang out in the room from the assembled ministers and officers, and it appears that rot fungus has worked as well, said Barrow with a smile, nodding toward the television screen where Hunter Wallace still barked. "Our own sky is no longer our enemy. The bastards are still coming, but this time they're going to have to fight us blind."